So before we get started, let's make sure that our buildings are showing up because it's going to be an important graphic in our final delivery here. So under where we get to building color, actually this probably says property line color for you right now. So change that to building color. That's when I connected it to the building floor plates. And I'm going to just change this to preview so we can see that. And then let's just slide back here until we get to the buildings and turn those on. And that way we'll see them in the generative design run. We're going to come back and change the building width. There's a little bit of a wildness about what we originally set for this, but I'm going to let that run in generative design. Let me close these off. This actually shouldn't be showing yet. I didn't want these to show. I wanted to show you how to get there. What we need to do is show the graph properties and show the graph status. And when you show the graph status, it probably says none, and you have to turn this to generative design. And you'll notice that an error comes up. It says a modified, one of the nodes has been modified. It says please run the graph. When you run it, that error tends to disappear, so I think we're all set. For the properties, study type, study 1, we can call it. Video, I'll call it, just to give it a clear designation. And then under generative design, you want to include the file dependencies. And then what you need to do, if I was to show you the file right now, this is the file that we're working on. And there is no other folder associated with that, the dependencies. Actually, there's this one here. I'm going to delete it because it's already been created. Let me just get rid of that one. This is what it should look like for you. And if we do a save as, or we do a save function, and I'm just going to save that. Oops, let me cancel. I don't know why that didn't just save. File, save. Oh, I see, because I gave it another file name. So we can leave it that way. I'll do a save. And I want to show you what shows up in that folder. So let me go back to it right now. So it's saved. I renamed that, and so it saved it as Generative Study 1, and it saved a new folder called Generative Study 1 Dependencies. So these are all the extra data that it needs to run generative design. So if you're having problems, you probably haven't saved it and it hasn't created this folder for you. So I'm going to put this to the side for a moment. And now we should be able to go ahead and go to generative design and create a study. This always shows up on the wrong screen. And what you'll see is Autodesk samples listed. You won't see your study. If you click on the folder, it's going to give you paths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this path that I've already created, and I'll go ahead and make a new path. And mine's on the desktop, and it's generative work files is the folder name. Let me step back out to that and go to generative work files. And then, so it'll look for everything in there, and I'll go select that folder. And then I can close that off. And now if I go to generative work files, those studies will be available to me. And so we're working on generative study 1. So I've clicked on that. And now the things that I called inputs, you'll remember in the Dynamo, are now showing up. The target square footage is showing up. It looks like we can change that value if we want. The width of the building is said to be variable from 1 to 100, which is a little bit very odd. It's 1 to 100 feet of width. And we're going to try to maximize the number of good views. And we're just going to, this is just how many reiterations it's going to do of it. And we'll do a randomized run of this. So I'm going to go ahead and click generate so we can just see what happens the first go around with this. And this one's going to run a little bit slower because of the, but there's some of the first studies. And the one why I wanted to run this was to show you that when we only have 1 foot, here we have the winning one with the most amount of views here. So if I select on this, but the building width is obviously only 10 feet, so there's who knows how many stories available, and so the number of good views is 250. I guess one of the interesting things is, though, this is probably the maxing out of number of good views for us to keep in mind. So I'm going to close this one off, and I'm going to make a modification to the width of the building. So we'll just go from, let's say, 40 feet to 100, and we'll work in steps of 10, let's say, or maybe just 20. Just to keep the amount of math. So I'm going to go ahead now and save that again. And then we'll go back to generative design and create another study. Let me pull that on the screen. Sorry. And once again, I'll hit that generative, the one that we saved it as. And you'll notice now that it's variable from 40 to 100. So we have all the same settings here. And now I'm going to go to randomize and go ahead and start generating some new possibilities here. And because that's at a much different increment, I think that'll run a little bit faster. Let's see what happens. Yep, so we have now 20 outputs. And you can see how we're maxing out at the number of good views up here. It's saying that there's only, the maximum number of good views is only 14, which is a little bit concerning for me because we did have that 250 good views. So now what I've done is I've gone over and selected just a certain region by clicking and dragging, and I've just dragged for the number of good views. So all the best views will show up on the site, and they're all maxing out at 15, and that makes me a little bit concerned that there may be something wrong with the math that we're doing, and so I might need to actually investigate that for us a little bit. If we were to look down at the ones that only have 6 views, and this is obviously not studying every width of building. You can see how it's doing 40, 60, 80, and 100 is the width. But the winners are always in the 40 level. So this number of good views is 6 here. So the count is six vectors that come through. And remember, we had 250. So I'll do a little bit of research on that. But otherwise, the generative portion of it is working fairly well. It's just determining. So if we make this number of good views, and we make this sort by, I'm trying to figure out where we get to the best view. Oh, I know, I have this range shut down, so I'm not seeing them all. Let's pull this back up again. So we're just looking at the 14. So we have our 6 best, which are not actually they are our tallest building because we set the width for 40. So I might change that width to see if we can get a little better view out of that. And then like I said, I'm still concerned about why we only have 14 or 15 good views. So I'll do a little research on that, and then I'll post a little video addendum to that.